Hi, everybody. I'm Al Bernstein, Showtime boxing analyst, and I listen to the Ringside Boxing Show.
Live from Monterey on California's beautiful Central Coast, this is the Ringside Boxing Show. I'm Dennis Taylor, welcoming you to join me and my expert analysts, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, and John J. Responti, today and every week for the hottest, sweatiest show on the West Coast. And now, from Studio 1A, it's the Ringside Boxing Show.
Welcome to the Ringside Boxing Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network. I'm Dennis Taylor, and we have got something for you in the second half of today's show that's a first for us in our 10 years that we've been doing this podcast. A Russian. John Responti and I will be interviewing undefeated WBA light heavyweight world champion Dmitry Bivol in about 25 minutes, and we're going to ask him about his life in Russia and his terrific amateur career and what it's like to train and fight in the U.S. and how it all compares to his home, and also what he did to get ready for Isaac Chilemba, who will try to take Bivol's title on Saturday at the Hard Rock Hotel and Casino in Atlantic City. You're going to see that one on HBO. Paul McLaughlin, our British correspondent, will join us before that with his weekly report on what's going on in the UK right now. He watched all those wild fights in the United Kingdom last night, and he's got a little something to tell us about all of that. And we're going to start off with a look at the recent headlines and last night's fights with our expert analyst. Travis Hartman's a professional boxer, boxing trainer, and boxing promoter. From Osborne, Missouri, he's now living and training in Orlando, Florida. Rizwan Zahid is a boxing journalist from Toronto. John J. Responti is chief lead writer for MaxBoxing.com and DogHouseBoxing.com. And John and I teamed up to write an Amazon bestseller, Intimate Warfare, The True Story of the Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward Boxing Trilogy. Travis, let me start with you. You put on your promoter's hat to hold a charity boxing event this past weekend in your hometown. Tell us what it was all about and what you do. What did you do there, and how did it go?
Yeah, it was awesome because if you guys know that I'm obviously a small town guy. I was born and raised in Osborne, Missouri, which is population 455. That is 455, and I graduated with 15 people in my class. So it was a very small town, and I've been pro for almost 15 years now, and even in my amateur career, we never did any events there because it's such a small town. So this non-for-profit Childhood Cancer Foundation, I actually know the father of the kids who started it. They're not kids, they're adults, obviously. But and we kind of got together, and they wanted to do something like a knockout cancer type of event. We ended up calling it the Fight for the Fearless because it was for we ended up donating the proceeds to a 3-year-old. His name was Aspen, and he's battling leukemia, ALL. It's a pretty aggressive cancer, and it's a 3-year-old, and he's just been battling it. And so we're going to donate 100% of the proceeds to him, as well as we made a Taylor Flip Finley Cancer Scholarship. It's for kids who overcome childhood cancer and want to go on to college. And we're going to donate a portion of that to that scholarship fund as well. But last night was awesome, guys. We had a couple undefeated professional boxers from Kansas City that volunteered to come up, a couple of the veterans from St. Joe, Missouri, a couple from Osborne, another small town over here, and then obviously me and my brother Drew. We actually sparred, guys. Me and Drew sparred. Huh. It was pretty good. For the crowd kind of loved that, to see, two brothers going at it. It was for good fun, so it wasn't anything too awfully serious. But we had a big turnout, and we're going to do it. We're going to make it an annual thing now. And like I said, it's for a not-for-profit child cancer foundation called Rose Lowenstein. And every bit of the proceeds were going straight to that foundation. All of the boxers volunteered their time. We had a silent auction, guys. We had Sugar Ray Leonard boxing gloves, signed boxing gloves, certified, that we auctioned off. We auctioned off Muhammad Ali and Larry Holmes signed plaque by both of them. And it went for $750. It was pretty good. Everything was a really, really good night. It was really fun, and we did a really good thing. It made me feel really good today, thinking that there's more out there than just me. You know what I mean? It's once you start getting a little older, you realize that there's other things out there. And a famous quote from Ali, guys. I've been saying this for a while, and I'm trying to live by it. Ali said, "The service we have to others is the rent we pay for a room here on earth." And I truly believe that. I really do. I believe that service to others, it really is. It's our duty to help others nowadays. So that's kind of where I'm at with my life right now. That's kind of where I was at with this event, that I want to help people.
Man, that is fantastic, and I got an idea for you for next year's main event. How about a sparring match between Daniel Jacobs and Anthony Durrell?
Deal. Let's make that happen.
Wouldn't that be
I would
something?
love to make
Two
that
cancer
happen.
survivors.
Dude, that would be, oh my gosh.
Write that down.
That would be a blessing.
I'll bet you they do it, too.
Idea, Dennis.
Hey, it's what I do. Yeah. Okay, guys. I'm pretty sure I am likely to remember Mikey Garcia as one of my all-time favorite fighters because he epitomizes what I want from a fighter, which is a willingness to put that pristine, undefeated record in peril. Mauro Ranallo and Errol Spence both called it daring to be great after Mikey took on young, undefeated, just a total stud who was 5 inches taller than he was, 8-inch advantage in reach. His fight with Robert Easter Jr. was even on 2 scorecards after 5 rounds. And then Mikey did what Hall of Famers do. He used his head and he solved the puzzle, and it was quite a puzzle. And he found out a way to get to 39-0 on all 3 scorecards. And now he wants to take a bigger risk by going up 12 pounds to fight Errol Spence, who is part of that argument, not just for the pound-for-pound list, but for number 1 pound-for-pound. So you compare that to all these fighters, past and present, who cherry-picked their way toward the Hall of Fame their whole careers. And, man, I just fall in love with Mikey Garcia every time I watch him or hear about him. John, what's your impression of, first of all, of him choosing to take on Robert Easter Jr., considering the peril that this kid presented for him?
Well, the biggest problem, obviously, was the height and the reach, and that was what I was thinking about a lot, and I had some fun writing about it because anybody who's ever played at any kind of sports event with someone who's quite a bit taller, even like I was using basketball as an analogy, it's hard because they have that wingspan, and you have to figure out a way to get under it. You have to figure out a way to adapt to it. And that was what I was most interested in. I didn't really have a doubt that Mikey would win because he's so technically proficient and he's so talented that I figured he'd find a way. But in the early going, as you stated, it was tough because of that reach, and Easter was determined to box. But you just had a feeling, even when the fight was close and maybe Easter might have had a little bit of an edge, that Mikey was in control. You just were waiting for him to start taking over. And when he scored that knockdown in the 3rd round, which was beautiful, I didn't have a doubt. I didn't have a doubt going in, but they thought the fight was a little closer. I did not. I thought Mikey, as I wrote about a little while ago, pulled away as the fight progressed. And that's just the talent level. When a guy like him, the cream rises to the top, and again, he did. And he's a joy to watch. Some people have accused him, I had somebody write on Max Boxing, of cherry-picking and picking his opponents, but I just chuckle. Boxing fans, that's fine. We're very passionate, but if anybody says he's cherry-picking and talking about fighting Errol Spence, and not just talking, he wants to fight him. And Errol Spence wants to fight him. I mean, he's got a pair. We got some brass balls talking here. So,
yep.
All kudos to Mikey Garcia. He's fun to watch. It was very dramatic last night at Staples. with the crowd chanting Mikey, Mikey, and it got a little one-sided the last 4 rounds just because Mikey was doing his thing. And Easter, I think that knockdown changed the whole complexion of the fight because Easter didn't really want to engage very much. He did in the 9th. He tried to turn the fight around a little bit. All credit to him for that. But Mikey was doing his thing, and he's just so talented that he figures out a way. And as you said, that's a Hall of Fame fighter that does that. And he's a joy to watch. I can't wait till he fights Errol Spence. I think it will happen. I'm not going to say right now. If you ask me right now who I think will win, I'll tell you, but I'm not going to say anything right now until you ask me, Dennis. But that will be a fight that all of us will be salivating over and waiting on pins and needles for it to happen. And I do believe in 2019 it'll happen.
Riz, what do you think it was that changed after 5 rounds? What adjustment did Mikey make to turn this thing into his fight?
I think he was just he saw himself as the puncher, and the funny thing is Easter said, I'm going to be the boxer in this fight, and Garcia didn't seem to want to even argue that, because the first couple rounds he was kind of just trying to close the distance. But the big thing I noticed is Robert Easter's one of those guys. There's a lot of these kind of tall, lanky fighters, but if you're not using that length and reach and ability, it's a disservice, and it actually hurts you. And I think that's what I noticed yesterday from Easter. He wasn't moving around. He was kind of staying in the pocket, which doesn't make sense when you're the taller, lanky guy and trying to keep the guy with that much power at bay. And some of the rounds were close, and Easter did good work. But I mean, if you're not going to let your hands go, if you're not going to be kind of like Paul Williams, Paul Williams never really boxed from the outside, but he threw 1,000 punches a fight. And Robert Easter, you're not going to win when you're throwing 500 punches, and most of them are jabs. You're not, there's no reason the opponent in front of you is not going to try to force his way inside, because it's not like Mikey had to really cut off the ring or jab his way inside. He just had to walk in and take whatever he wanted, because Easter was giving him that. That's kind of a big notice, the big difference that I noticed kind of midway through the fight. The first couple rounds, Easter was really disciplined, but that old adage of Mike Tyson, everyone has a plan until they get hit in the mouth. And I think that's exactly what we saw yesterday, because the first couple rounds, Easter looked good. And even though in the third round he was still doing well, Mikey started closing that distance. And then you're right, that knockdown completely changed the complexion of the fight, because Easter just wasn't willing to engage or throw enough. He said, he never had the timing right for the right hand, but I think part of that was also he knew the left hook was coming if he missed. And as soon as you have that kind of doubt in your mind, and there's moments where he tried to put it together. I think in the 10th round he put a good flurry together, but I wouldn't even say he got the best of that exchange. And I think right then he kind of knew that, okay, I'm not going to be able to outbox this guy, and I can't outslug him, so I'm kind of out of ideas here. And Mikey's obviously a special talent. Like we already know this. Him saying he wants to fight Errol Spence, it doesn't seem like neither of them are joking around about this. It seems quite serious. I mean, the welterweight division is kind of on hold because Keith Thurman has stepped away. So Errol Spence is somewhat out of options. I mean, I think he can get the winner of Garcia and Porter, but for some reason that fight is happening in September when it could have happened, I'd say, even last month. So Errol Spence is going to kind of have to wait. So does he have to wait for that fight and then fight in January, or can he fight Mikey Garcia in maybe something like November? I think that's very possible, actually. I don't know if Mikey Garcia wants a tune-up first, but I mean, I think the fight could happen. I think it's an issue of time, and I don't know. I think Errol Spence and Mikey Garcia are probably looking at that fight more than any other possible fight for each other. But I think the issue is if Mikey's got to take a tune-up fight first. And as far as like some people are criticizing Errol Spence for taking a fight like this. Mikey Garcia is not a regular guy coming up in weight, and people have always had. Some people have issues with even when Golovkin fought Kell Brook as well. But you guys remember when Mosley fought De La Hoya, he had a couple of tune-up fights when he went up in weight. But no one's really looking at that fight and remembering, a welterweight picking on a lightweight, because there's a certain level of skill that both guys have. And even size could play a factor, definitely in this fight. There's also a difference in technique and style, and Mikey's obviously going to have to deal with a completely different animal in front of him. But Errol Spence has never fought a guy with this talent. He has probably not fought anyone like this since the amateur days, so he's going to have his work cut out for him too.
Go ahead, Travis. Go ahead.
Yeah, I was going to say, it does seem crazy when we're thinking Mikey Garcia is going to go up and fight Errol Spence. What a huge jump in weight and all of that. But the only example that comes to mind to me is I remember on this radio show when Manny Pacquiao wanted to fight Oscar De La Hoya. I thought it was ludicrous. I was like, there's no way that Manny Pacquiao could beat Oscar De La Hoya. Oscar De La Hoya was middleweight. He fought middleweight fights at that time and came back down to fight Pacquiao. So it's not unheard of for it to happen. I mean, I think Errol Spence is obviously, he's top 1-2 pound for pound in the world, bar none. But Mikey Garcia just keeps proving who he is and how talented and how special that guy is. So I don't want to rule him out of even having a chance or even fighting Errol Spence, because I mean, let's not count him out. I mean, I counted Pacquiao out, which was crazy, and I never did after that. But when I thought Pacquiao was going up to fight De La Hoya, I seriously laughed. I thought that was a joke, because De La Hoya's like 5'10", 5'11", was fighting at 160 before that. Manny Pacquiao's 5'6", 5'5" on a good day. And Manny Pacquiao ended up stopping Oscar De La Hoya, who we all know is a Hall of Famer, but obviously maybe he was past his prime, obviously. But it was still a fight that I thought Oscar De La Hoya would have won and should have won, but he didn't. So kudos to Mikey Garcia again. I gave him credit last week, and we all did on this show, for always wanting to fight the best out there, no matter what. And this was a fight that the risk was more than the reward, I think, with the height advantage and with everything going against him. And he went out there and showed us how special he is. And, man, Mikey Garcia, he's climbing up my ladder of being one of the favorite fighters to watch right now. And he really is. Just the way he keeps taking on all of these opponents and then just beating them with ease the way he does. It's impressive. It's truly impressive watching him right now.
Okay, so John, you teased us a little bit. Spence versus Mikey. What are Mikey's chances? Is this clearly a step too far, or is Mikey capable of winning this one?
Mikey's capable of winning this one, and I think it's because I'm still not convinced that Errol Spence is his defense is suspect. And as we know, Mikey is very accurate with his punches. I would give the edge to Errol Spence just because he's a little bigger, and Mikey hasn't faced anybody with the power that Errol Spence has, and it might be biting off a little bit too much. But I don't know. Right now, if I give Spence the edge, it's tiny. I have to think about this one a little bit. You're going to have two guys of superior talent going nose to nose, and nobody's going to have to be looking for each other. It's not going to be like Robert Easter last night, who was on his bicycle a lot of the time. Spence and Garcia will meet in the middle of the ring, and then it'll be let's see who's better. And the thing is that Mikey is better as far as technically. So that means to me, I see him landing some shots that Errol Spence might not have been hit with ever. And as Riz said so well, he's fighting, Errol Spence will be fighting somebody he's never fought as far as talent and all that. And I think that goes the same way for Mikey. I mean, I'm a few more questions about Spence. I really don't have any questions about Mikey. He is where he is because he deserves to be. So it might come down to who can take whose punch, because Mikey is so accurate that if he lands one of those left hooks or right hands, I don't know. I don't know if Errol Spence. And then he's moving up in weight, and he seems to still have his power, though. He's not knocking guys out, but he's sure knocking them down, as we saw in the his last couple of fights. So it's I would say right now, perhaps it's 50-50, maybe a little edge to Spence, but Mikey is one of those special guys. And we know, like I said, we know more about him than Errol Spence. And Errol Spence hasn't fought anybody like this. Well, he fought Kell Brook, and that was a very good fight, and he fought very well. But Mikey's fought tougher guys, I think. So I can't wait. I hope it happens because it is what boxing is all about. And who wins? Well, that one, it could come down to the last few rounds. Right now what popped into my head about how competitive it could be was Linares and Lomachenko, like that, with the two talents, figuring out ways to beat each other, going with Lomachenko coming up, and is he biting off a little bit? Maybe, but, I love the fact that he's trying. I love that. I think that's what, that's what it's all about, and that's the brass balls that I was talking about. So, let's do it. Let's get this one signed and let's get a date.
Okay, Riz, how do you see it? Is this close to a 50-50 fight, or is Mikey stepping up too far at 12 pounds, or and also is it going to be fan friendly?
I think I question if we see a tune-up first, because if we do, then I'll probably have a different opinion on it. When Mosley fought two tune-ups before he fought De La Hoya, we got a kind of idea of where he was. We knew his power carried up. I think that's a question for Mikey. Mikey clearly has the power to still drop guys, but he definitely doesn't have the power that he did, when he was a featherweight at 130. So when you're fighting a guy at 147, it's different. And, John is right. Errol Spence has not shown great defense so far, but he's able to take shots from guys like Kell Brook, and Kell Brook is a pretty decent puncher. So I wonder if Mikey's going to be able to hurt Spence at all. I know he's going to be able to land some shots, but if they're not going to have the same effect, is he going to be able to stop Spence's offense, because Mikey hasn't really shown tremendous defense either. But to be honest, he's never needed to, because in some ways his offense works so well that the punch output diminishes and guys are hesitant to throw back. So I don't think he's going to have that luxury over here, though. I think that's going to be the toughest test for Mikey. How he's going to deal with a fighter who is very smart, very intelligent in the ring, but also has the power and everything else to boot. I think if he was fighting other welterweights, I think he beats most welterweights. To be honest, I think if he was fighting Danny Garcia or Sean Porter, I think he has a very strong chance to beat both of those guys. But Errol Spence is a top dog, and kudos for Markey for taking that on. He understands. It's a high risk, but there's high reward out of that. If he's able to beat what people consider pretty much the guy at the welterweight division, there's no doubt then he's the number one boxer in the world. And for Errol Spence, he knows that Mikey Garcia is elite talent, and I think he almost thinks that he needs a test. He needs to prove it to everyone that that he's not just kind of fighting guys in mandatories while he's waiting on Thurman, that he's still going to be fighting other guys who have top level talent. And in some ways, I think it might go the way Golovkin and Kell Brook did, where both guys fought really well. Kell Brook didn't do anything bad in the fight, but one guy had tremendous amount of power, and it made kind of the difference. And I think that's what might happen here. I think Errol Spence has welterweight power, and we haven't seen if Mikey Garcia does yet, because even at lightweight, his power is not great. It's good, but at welterweight, it's going to be very different. So, good for Mikey for taking that on, and sometimes we don't fully agree with guys coming up in weight for fights. I think for this time, for this one and the situation both guys are in, I think it makes total sense.
So Travis, the other guy that we keep salivating over watching Mikey fight is Lomachenko, who's going to have to come up in weight to fight Mikey at 135. If Mikey goes up 12 pounds to fight Spence, how likely are we to see him lose all that weight again to face Lomachenko? It seems like it's more logical to fight Lomachenko first and then go up and challenge all these welterweights. Also, if Mikey fights Spence and beats him, why even bother with Lomachenko, right? You got all that. You got that whole smorgasbord of 147 guys to fight after that.
You're 100% right, but Mikey Garcia kind of does what Mikey Garcia wants to do, and he fights the best no matter if it makes sense or not. So I wouldn't rule it past him to do whatever. If he goes up 12 pounds, fights Errol Spence, beats him, and Lomachenko's sitting there calling him out, and everybody thinks that would be the best fight, I would not put it past Mikey Garcia to attempt to go down and fight him again. He's turning out to be that fighter. That is the best kind of fighter for boxing, and that is why boxing will continue to flourish, because of guys like Mikey Garcia and the attitude that he has towards fighting anybody, anywhere. And to be honest, we have a lot of fighters out there that are doing that. Errol Spence is one of those guys. He went over and fought Kell Brook in Kell Brook's home country, and I didn't even think he had to do that, and he did it and was happy to do it. So I think Errol Spence probably welcomes the challenge of Mikey Garcia, especially since he's bigger than him as well. So he would serve so many advantages Errol Spence would have going in that fight. But never count out an undefeated, crafty, intelligent, textbook savvy guy like Mikey Garcia from pulling off a crazy upset like that. I don't think that's a close 50-50 fight at this point. I think I have Errol Spence winning that fight. It's a little bigger than a 50-50, I think, but don't rule him out. I'm also the guy that picked. I literally laughed on the radio when Manny Pacquiao was going to fight Oscar De La Hoya. I thought it was a joke. So don't listen to my predictions on this one, but I think if Errol Spence and Mikey Garcia fight, I have to. I just think Errol Spence is too big, too good, and all of the above. But do I want to see that? Yes. Does any boxing expert or analyst want to see that? Oh, my gosh. That's like a money fight for all of us. That would be amazing. And when guys deserve the respect and the kudos, I want to give it to them. And Mikey Garcia deserves every bit of congratulations, kudos, everything that he's getting right now, because he is what's right and good about boxing. He's what's right and good about the business of boxing and the boxing side of boxing, because he just does what's best for him and does what he thinks is best, and that's fighting everybody. I love fighters like that, guys, and I know you guys do too, but Mikey Garcia is the man right now.
This is the Ringside Boxing Show from Monterey, California. I'm Dennis Taylor. We're talking to our expert analyst, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, John J. Responti. John, you probably got bed sores on your butt right now because you sat all day yesterday and watched boxing, starting with that whole card in England, which was it sounds like it was a spectacular card. I didn't get to see it, but it sounds like it was unbelievable. What was your favorite fight yesterday from that British card?
Oh, the Dereck Chisora Carlos Takam fight, heavyweight fight, was really a spellbinder because you had Carlos Takam was winning that fight through 8 rounds, and he's so busy for a heavyweight. You know, you don't see that, and that was always the complaints about heavyweights, that they just kind of stand there and then they throw 1 or 2 punches. But one punch can change everything, and that's exactly what happened. Chisora hit Takam with a right hand on the temple, and he went down, and it shocked everybody at the O2. And then when Takam got up, Chisora shot another right hand from 10 Downing Street and knocked him out. So I mean, that was an incredibly dramatic fight. I don't think anybody expected Chisora to win. You know, he's had a lot of issues. He's been a crazy guy outside the ring with some of his antics. He's actually a very likable guy if you ever watch him interviewed. So I was actually quite pleased that he won. The Parker-Whyte fight was very dramatic, back and forth, where Parker got knocked down once because of more of a headbutt, but second time very legit. And then he knocked Whyte down in the 12th round. And there, after the fight, I was thinking if this was the old days and the fight had gone 15 rounds, Parker might have won. So that was good. And then one of my favorites, Katie Taylor, was sparkling like she always is. She dominated, won by stoppage in 3 rounds. So it was sold out at the O2. The crowd, it was great. The fights were fabulous. So that was one of those cards where, you know, a lot of times we watch these fights and they have 5 fights, 6 fights, and 5 of them are, and the main event was really good, or 1 was good and the main event was really good. In this case, every fight I watched was a good fight. So kudos to Eddie Hearn, the promoter, and whoever matched all those fights. They were good fights. But that fight between Chisora and Takam, 2 huge 250, 260-pound heavyweights throwing bombs at each other. I mean, that was incredible. Crowd going nuts. I mean, the crowd was hoarse by the end when that one ended. And then the shocking ending, that was incredible. And that's what boxing's about. You know, there's nothing more dramatic to me than boxing when something like that, you know, you're just kind of sitting there watching it and then bam, changes everything. And it was a great card, Dennis. A lot of fun to watch.
That's heavyweight boxing for you. Riz, where do you think Dillian Whyte fits into the heavyweight landscape now with Joshua and Wilder and Povetkin and Fury and Bellew and Big Baby Miller and Luis Ortiz and Parker?
I think he might logically end up being the next guy up for Wilder, because it seems like that's what both guys are going to end up doing before they fight each other, just fight other guys that each other have fought. It's hard to judge. I mean, he beat Parker, and he dropped Parker. Parker went that distance with Joshua and managed to stay up. So that being said, he almost got knocked out himself. So clearly, Dillian Whyte has some decent power, but he's also there to be hit. So like any Wilder fight, we can see Wilder getting knocked out. We can also see Wilder winning in the first second or the last second, because that's just how freakish that man's power is. I think that could be the next logical fight, because Deontay Wilder has limited options actually. You know, where Joshua's still. This is what you're seeing, where even when the fight is not happening, Joshua's side still commands so much money that they can lure the best opponents to even fight in England. I mean, I don't think Povetkin's ever fought there, but you know, he's going over there now. And Wilder was willing to fight in Russia, which, you know, we all give him a lot of credit for, but it's also because he doesn't have the same pull. Where Joshua knows he can fight in England and sell out 50,000, even if he's not fighting Wilder. Where Wilder probably can't do the same, even if he's fighting in his home state of Alabama. So it'll be interesting to see who Wilder fights next. I think Dillian Whyte has put himself in a strong position for Wilder, even though, you know, I don't personally think he'll win, and I think most people would agree with that. But I think that's where he fits in. He's a guy who will be known as a guy who fought the best in his era. And you know, say what you want about this era, but you know, there's a lot of those kind of guys. In fact, you know, we were talking about Mosley when he went up in weight. when he fought Wilfredo Rivera. Rivera fought, he fought and dropped Vargas. He gave Mosley a tough fight, and he fought De La Hoya. And I think Dillian Whyte might be one of those kind of guys. A guy who's a step below the elite of the division, but a guy who's able to earn a shot against all of those kind of fighters. I mean, Parker's a big win. Parker was undefeated up until he fought Joshua. So I don't know what the betting odds were for this fight, but before the Joshua fight, I'm sure people would have picked Parker, and even before yesterday, I thought a lot of people would have picked Parker. So good for Dillian Whyte, and I'm sure we're going to see him against Wilder pretty soon.
Okay, Travis had to take off. He had something to do. John, this is an interesting aspect of the heavyweight division to me right now. Who wants Luis Ortiz right now? He fought a nobody in his comeback fight, but he reminded us during that fight that he's absolutely horrifying puncher, just absolutely cratered this guy in the second round. People dismiss him right now as being long in the tooth. He's one of those guys like Sonny Liston. He's listed at 39, but supposedly he might be a whole lot older. But, man, he gave Deontay Wilder all he wanted in March, almost knocked him out, and that's the only loss of his career. I doubt Wilder wants him again. I really doubt Joshua wants him. Is he in kind of a no man's land as a heavyweight contender right now?
He kind of is, because he's got that power, like you said, and he's got that Cuban pedigree. So he's a clever guy in there too.
Yep.
Big guy, and he looked in great shape yesterday. Yeah, he was fighting a nobody. He knocked him out dramatically. There's that one-punch knockout again. We were talking about, the crowd was already booing, and boom, they were cheering. He seems to have a bigger fan base now, too, after the Wilder fight, because he had Wilder so close. He had him on the brink, and he's heartbroken, according to what I was listening to yesterday, about not winning that fight. And I actually thought he was going to win that fight at that point. I thought Wilder was going to collapse, because he was hitting him with so many punches. Kudos to Wilder for surviving and then knocking him out. So, yeah, he is one of those guys that I don't think anybody really wants to fight because of that. And not just because of the power, just because he's a good fighter. He's 40 years old or 49 years old, whatever he is, he's still good. And he'll never lose his power. He's not going to beat anybody with speed, but he's a southpaw, which is always difficult. And he's got so much power in that left hand of his, it can change everything. So there's something different about the guy too. It's almost like the loss. It broke his heart, but it made him more determined. So do the big guys, like you said, Joshua and Wilder, want to fight him? I don't think so. He's in a good position to keep demanding a rematch. I don't think there's no way Wilder takes another chance when he could still fight Joshua here, regardless of all the crap going on between Eddie Hearn and all of them. I mean, I think Wilder's like, no way, I got to fight Joshua. Then if I beat Joshua, then maybe I would fight Ortiz again in a rematch. That would make sense. But then Ortiz, he's not getting any younger, as we said. So what does he do? Does he keep fighting these lesser guys? Is he going to fight Big Baby Miller at some point? I mean, it all comes down to the promoters and all that. But yeah, he's kind of in no man's land in a sense, and that's too bad. It's almost like you got too much talent, so people don't really want to touch you, and that happens in boxing. He might be able to be outboxed a little bit, but that power is the great equalizer. And like I said, he's damn good, Dennis, and he's kind of the outside man looking in right now, and that's too bad.
Okay, Riz, feel free to weigh in on Ortiz if you want, but here's the last question is for both of you guys. Saturday in Atlantic City, we're going to see Sergio Kovalev fight Eleider Alvarez for Kovalev's WBO light heavyweight championship. What do you expect from that one, Riz?
I honestly don't know. I was thinking about this yesterday. We forgot perhaps how good Kovalev is, even though he hasn't really looked good in his last couple fights. In the first fight against Ward, most people had him winning. And the second fight against Ward, he was still up on the scorecards, and it took low blows and his trainer pretty much joining the other side for him to lose. So we talked about this. I said this before the second fight. He's a bad luck kind of guy. So his two fights since, he didn't look great. Eleider Alvarez is a lot more fan-friendly and a guy who could be right in front of him. I saw Eleider Alvarez in Toronto during the Adonis Stevenson-Badou Jack fight, and honestly, that is a big dude. That is a guy who was probably definitely 200 pounds when I saw him. and not probably a little extra body fat, but nothing extraordinary. He's a big dude, but he's also one of those guys. His power doesn't necessarily translate despite his massive size. I think Kovalev's a better, smarter fighter, but I want to see how much he has left because it must be hard for him to know that the Andre Ward fight was the big one of his career, and he knows that despite whatever happened, he didn't win those fights. So how motivated is he for someone like Alvarez? Eddie Alvarez, Adonis Stevenson pretty much refused to fight him at some point, and that's why this fight ended up happening. So I think there's a good chance we're gonna be in for a war. But Eddie Alvarez has started his career kind of late, so I don't know. It's gonna be a good fight though. But I think honestly, I think Dmitry Bivol might be both of those guys. But let's see what happens on Saturday first.
Okay, John, what's your take on this fight?
Man, I'm with Riz. I give Kovalev the edge, and I would think, but barely. I think that it's going to depend on the length of the fight. If Alvarez can handle his power and take Kovalev deeper into the fight, we know he tends to get tired. Alvarez might win. I mean, that's the way I see it. But if Kovalev can get him and knock him down and hurt him and maybe stop him, that's the thing. But Alvarez also has been inactive, and that's going to hurt him, I think, a little bit. But I give Kovalev the edge to win because the thing about Kovalev too is we touched on this before, and Riz said it. He's a good fighter, and he's not just a slugger. He can box, and I can kind of see him outboxing Alvarez. But the concern for me is his stamina, like I said. So if he hasn't taken this guy seriously, and if he hasn't, he's crazy. Something could happen. He might get dumped. That wouldn't be a shocker to me. It would be a stunner, but maybe not a shocker. But I think Kovalev will win, and I think they're setting it up with Bivol next. And I'm with Riz. I mean, the way Bivol is looking, I think he can beat him too, beat those guys. So I think it's going to be a really good fight, though, Dennis, Kovalev and Alvarez. I think Alvarez wants respect. Adonis would have nothing to do with him. He avoided him like the plague. So this is going to be. I think this is going to be a kind of a slow to go fight, meaning slow to produce the drama that we love. Kovalev will be trying to knock him out, and then if he doesn't, then it's going to get really interesting as we get into the later rounds. So it could turn out to be a real war.
Okay, and this is a great place to remind our audience that one of the fighters in the co-feature of Saturday night's HBO card is undefeated Dmitry Bivol from St. Petersburg, Russia, who will defend his WBA light heavyweight crown against Isaac Chilemba. John Responti and I interviewed Dmitry this week about that fight and his life in Russia and what he thinks about the United States and a lot of other things. Dmitry spoke to us with the assistance of an interpreter, and there was a lot of back and forth during this interview between the two of them in Russian. So we edited those parts out. We edited the Russian language out. So what you're going to hear is Dmitry answering some of the questions himself, and other times you'll hear the voice of the interpreter speaking for Dmitry. So we wanted to clarify that for you in advance. I think you'll be able to tell them apart. The interpreter's got more of a U.S.-type delivery to his speech patterns, and Bivol's very Russian. So that's coming up very shortly. These guys are our expert analysts, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, John J. Responti. Guys, terrific insight, as always. Thanks very much, and you guys have a great week.
You take care, guys.
All right. Our British correspondent, Paul McLaughlin, is coming up in 1 minute to talk about the UK boxing scene, and then John Responti will be back with me to talk to Dmitry. So do not touch that dial. We'll be back very, very shortly.
You're listening to the Ringside Boxing Show, the hottest, sweatiest show on West Coast Radio.
Go on, get out of here.
Oh boy, is this great!
I'm Dennis Taylor, co-author of the Amazon bestseller Intimate Warfare, the true story of the Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward boxing trilogy. Writing this book was a labor of love for John J. Responti and myself. We enjoyed every minute of the process and considered it a privilege to tell the tale of one of the most electrifying boxing trilogies in the history of this sport. Intimate Warfare traces the collision course of Arturo Gatti and Mickey Ward from their earliest days through their 3 epic fights, as well as the aftermath of this great rivalry, which culminated in one of the greatest friendships in boxing. Intimate Warfare has received a 4.5-star rating from readers and was endorsed by Hall of Famers Harold Letterman and Joe Cortez and 2-time Trainer of the Year Virgil Hunter. Our foreword was written by Ray Boom Boom Mancini, another one of the greatest blood and guts fighters of our time. Get your copy today at Amazon.com.
Hi guys, it's Paul McLaughlin with your weekly roundup of everything going on in the UK boxing scene at the moment, and I'm trying to get my breath back after a sensational night of boxing at the O2 Arena last night. Let's start off with the undercard, where Joshua Buatsi destroyed Andreas Pokumeko inside 1 round to win the first title of his professional career. The Rio 2016 Olympic bronze medalist was a class above his Latvian counterpart as he made a vicious statement to claim the WBA International Light Heavyweight title in just his 7th pro fight. Next up, it's Conor Benn, who again got the better of Cedric Paynard after another explosive encounter in London. The 2 welterweights produced a Fight of the Year contender at the York Hall last year, and once more they put on a show. But this time, it was over 10 rounds, and it was the 21-year-old Ben who had his hand raised at the finish, claiming his first title in the pro game. The vacant WBA Continental title, taking a decision helped by 3 knockdowns by scores of 98-91, 98-90 and 97-90. In between that, Katie Taylor also won her fight, and then we went on to the support act for the main event. Dereck Chisora incredibly knocked out Carlos Takam in a comeback victory that took the roof off the O2. The popular heavyweight was on the verge of defeat until he uncorked 2 colossal right hands in the 8th round. Takam, who took Anthony Joshua into the 10th round last year, was floored twice and could not recover on the 2nd occasion. Here's what Dereck Chisora thought immediately after the fight.
It was tough, but this fight was very emotional for me. And Takam is a true tough African boy. Very tough.
He's only been stopped twice, once by AJ, once by Povetkin, both in 10 rounds. You've done it in 8. What sort of message has that sent out?
Hey, listen, the guy was tough. I realized I could not trade with him toe-to-toe. So I knew the over right hand was going to catch him, but I could not chuck it in early rounds because I knew I'd be left open. So on that round, something in my mind that said, you know what, it's time you send it home. It didn't hurt me, man. I'm English. Nobody can hurt us.
Well, his heavyweight journey is fully back on track, and then we went on to the main event, Dillian Whyte versus Joseph Parker, where Dillian Whyte flattened Parker twice and then survived a near knockout in the final 30 seconds to claim a points win in their high-stakes heavyweight showdown on Saturday. Short left hooks from Whyte had Parker, who took Joshua the distance earlier this year, crashing to the canvas in the 2nd and 9th rounds. But with the clock ticking, Whyte was down himself and saved by the final bell. Whyte was more aggressive in the home city and deserved victory, and it makes him a forerunner for a rematch with Joshua.
It's a good fight. Parker is slick. None of the people know why he went to distance to AJ. It's slick. Like, we knew he was going to fight the first couple rounds. Cheat his way for running box the last round. I knew he was going to, and then come out in the last 2 rounds. But I'm just annoyed that I messed up at the final hurdle. But it's a learning experience. I went down. I was rocked. Last time I fought Joshua, I got rocked and I carried on fighting, but I got rocked. I took a knee. The referee started at 4. I thought it started at 2. He went 4. I was like, okay, I got up. It's about learning. I've had 7 amateur fights, 24 professional fights. I'm still learning. Sparring is good, but it's not the real thing. So I'm still learning, and this man's had 20-something years boxing experience. 60-something amateur fights. I'm privileged to come in here and compete against this guy. Everyone's underestimated me. I outboxed him at time and I jabbed him at time, and he's got a really fast jab.
Now, we have to see what this opens up for the heavyweight division. Will Chisora face Whyte? Will Whyte face Wilder? Will Joshua face Wilder? Who knows? I'm going for a lie down. What a great night of boxing. I'll be back next week. In the meantime, guys, gloves up and protect yourselves at all times. Back to the studio.
Thank you, Paul McLaughlin. Man, what an electric boxing scene over in the UK. We had Al Bernstein on this show last week and asked him where were the most rabid fans in the world. And he, without hesitation, he said the United Kingdom is where you find them. Always great stuff from you, Paul McLaughlin. Thank you very much. We're going to take one more quick break and then come back with undefeated WBA light heavyweight champion Dmitry Bivol from St. Petersburg, Russia. That's 1 minute away on the Ringside Boxing Show.
Hi, I'm Dennis Taylor, host of the Ringside Boxing Show, where since 2008 we have been continuously sponsored by Garcia Boxing, the first family of the sweet science on California's beautiful Central Coast. Trainers Max and Sam Garcia and ring strategist Dean Familton are regarded among the most knowledgeable in the game. And Kathy Garcia, who manages all Garcia boxing fighters, is renowned for her integrity and career guidance, having taken 2 boxers to #1 world rankings. Together they comprise one of the most respected teams in the sport. Learn more by calling 831-261-3214 or send them an email at garciaboxing25@aol.com.
This is tremendous, Don, just tremendous. The atmosphere heavy, uncertain, overtones of ugliness. A reminder in a way of how it was in March of 1964 at Miami Beach, when Clay met Liston for the first time and nobody was certain how it would turn out. The crowd is tense. They've been here since 10 this morning.
Welcome back to the Ringside Boxing Show on the Grueling Truth Sports Network, where today we're going to treat you to some international flavor on this show. Our featured guest is the undefeated WBA light heavyweight champion of the world, Dmitry Bivol from St. Petersburg, Russia. Dmitri's 13-0 with 11 knockouts, including a 12th round TKO victory over Sullivan Barrera at Madison Square Garden in March. You all saw that one on HBO. He's currently training to defend his world title on August 4th in Atlantic City against Isaac Chilemba, and we are excited that he's taking some time away from his training camp today to talk to us today on the Ringside Boxing Show. Dmitry, thank you so much for joining us. How are you, and how's your training camp going?
Yeah, thank you. I'm good. Training camp is going well. Everything is okay. I have a good sparring partner. Нет травм у меня, все в порядке.
No injuries, everything went very well. Just finishing up already with camp.
And I'm looking forward to my next fight, of course.
Yeah. Of course, yeah. Dmitry, your biography on the Internet says that you began boxing in your native country, which was Soviet Kyrgyzstan, when you were 6 years old. And when you were 11, your family moved to Russia, where you joined their amateur boxing program. Your mother is Korean and your father is Moldovan. Was it difficult for you moving to Russia as a person of mixed race?
Of course, it's difficult when you speak only Russia, but your blood Korean, half and half Moldova, and you live in Russia. And I born in Kyrgyzstan. It's too difficult, but
I believe I gained a lot from taking the best from each step, from each of the races, and competing myself. To add to the previous question, being in Russia, Russia is a part of the overall USSR. And there's a lot of people that were in Russia, and as long as you spoke Russian, you felt at home. So that wasn't that bad.
Okay. Second question, can you describe for us what the amateur boxing program was like in Russia? Is it very different from what we see here in the United States at the amateur level?
There's a lot of attention to the amateur sports overall and it's amateur boxing. Each region has good boxers from that region that are getting a lot of attention and getting financing, and basically they're getting motivated to perform at their best.
Dmitry, you had a wonderful amateur career, just a great amateur career. You won 2 world championships at the junior level and a bronze medal at the 2008 Youth World Championships, and you were Russia's national champion at light heavyweight in 2012 and 2014. Did you come close to making the Russian Olympic team in 2012?
As far as 2012 Olympics, in 2011 I had to be number 1. in order to go to the Olympics, but I was not number one at that time. As far as the 2014 Olympics, I was 2016 Olympics. I was actually number one, but I made the decision to turn pro before I was actually taking the step to go to the Olympics.
Why did you decide to do that? Why did you decide to turn professional?
To be honest with you, I thought about it for some time, and I considered both options. But at that time, it was difficult because to go to the Olympics, I still needed to stay in the amateurs for at least a couple of years, and I wasn't sure if I was going to get there and how I was going to perform there. And I was already 23 years old at the time, and I just made the decision that turning pro was the right move because a lot more people pay attention to the professional boxers. If you make, for example, take a look at kids training in gyms. Most of their favorite fighters are professional fighters. They look up to them and they see them. And professional boxing is just broader. A lot more people know about it and watch it. So I just decided that that's the right move for my decision. And I didn't want to wait until I was 26 to try to go pro.
The 2012 Olympics is also where Alexander Usyk
amateur is also not easy. Yeah.
For the Ukraine. Just last week, we saw Usyk defeat Murat Gassiev to win 4 cruiserweight belts. Did it surprise you, Dmitry, how easily Usyk was able to defeat Gassiev?
I was a little surprised because, I was giving him about 60%. I knew that he would have the advantage because he has a very deep amateur background. But at the same time, I was surprised how he was able to win almost every round because he really made it look easy. And that was a little surprising, and that's really that gives a lot of respect to him.
Yeah. Why do you think so many outstanding fighters come from the Eastern European countries, especially the former Soviet states?
In Europe and all over the USSR, they really enjoy boxing and they love boxing. A lot of them were amateurs for a long time. There was no professionals back then in Russia. Back before when it was the USSR, it was not even allowed. So a lot of these kids were motivated. They were training hard. We have a good school of boxing over there, and once they got the opportunity to turn pro, they're able to show a lot of good results and they're able to prove themselves. I really think it's the history behind it in the background.
I see. Did you have a fighter that you really admired growing up, Dmitry, that you kept an eye on, tried to watch all his fights whenever possible?
Yeah, definitely. As I was growing up, and when I was just a kid, I liked Mike Tyson a lot. Then later on, I watched a lot of Roy Jones's fights. He was a great fighter. And later on, Muhammad Ali, definitely a big legend, and definitely a fighter that everybody looked up to. And then, lately I've really been enjoying Leonard's fights, and I think he's something special.
Yeah, cool. Yeah,
Figure Leonard.
When Dmitry first came to America, when you first came here, what were your first impressions of this country?
Before I only saw this on TV. When I came here and I saw this in real life, it was great. It was very interesting. It was exciting to be here, and most of all, I really enjoyed the fact that people really love boxing here, and that really motivates me. I really like that.
Dmitry, how different is life in the United States from life in Russia?
There's a lot of differences in my life, though. Because I'm a boxer, usually I'm visiting the gyms and I'm training, and a lot of the guys that I trained with over there and the gyms over there, they're pretty much the same as here. A lot of hardworking guys that are trying to achieve something, and most of them are good people and good, with strong character and a big will, and that really matches. As far as countries, there's other differences like as far as like price levels of goods. A lot of the electronics and things you can buy are a lot more expensive in Russia than they are here. But for example, like the amount that people make is a lot less over there than it is over here. So there are definitely differences. But I don't get to associate much with them because boxing is boxing.
How difficult is it to be away from your family while you're training?
There's good things and there's bad things. Obviously I miss them and I miss my kids and growing up sometimes without me being around, which is sad, But this was the first time in camp I actually brought my family over for the first 3 weeks of camp, and they were here with me, which was great, and it was awesome to see them every time after training. But at the same time, fighters, boxers kind of have to have a big ego in a way, because when we're training, we get tired. We don't have a lot of energy to give to our family after training. So we need to really focus on the training and preparations for the fight. So a lot of the times I was not able to give them a lot of attention when they were here. And so the positive is, it's part of our job to focus on boxing only while we're in camp, and then enjoy our families after. And of course, I miss them all the time. I don't want my kids growing up that quick, when I'm in training camp a lot.
Do you think it's possible you might eventually move to the United States permanently?
Anything is possible. It's possible that maybe I'll decide to live here for a little bit sometime. I still have a lot of things in Russia that also hold me. It's my home, and my parents are there, and my relatives and my friends. And but we've talked about it with my family that I might move over here and live here and train here for some time. So it's definitely a possibility.
This is the Ringside Boxing Show from Monterey, California. I'm Dennis Taylor with John J. Responte, and we're talking to the WBA light heavyweight champion of the world, Dmitry Bivol, and we're talking to him through his interpreter. Dmitry, what's been the focus for you and your team in training camp as you've been preparing for Isaac Chilemba?
Our main goal for every camp is to make sure that we have some planned combinations, some planned moves that we're going to use in this fight, and to work on them throughout the camp, and to work on them in sparring, and to make sure that our body and our mind is ready to just automatically perform these combinations and perform these punches that my trainer and I have planned for the fight. And my main goal is to make sure that I can do that automatically without having to think. And that's what we've been working on, and also making sure to prepare that we're ready for 12 rounds and we're ready to go the full distance and preparing our bodies for that as well.
What kind of fight do you expect from Chilemba on August 4th?
I think it will be a very interesting fight because, for him, it's another chance to become a world champion. And everybody's motivated once they're in that type of fight. And then he's a really good fighter, very experienced, and I believe that he's going to try different things. He might try to move backwards and try to box and counter-attack like he did with Kovalev. Maybe he'll make the decision to go forward and, try to flinch and then try to be more aggressive. I'm preparing for anything. I don't believe it's going to be an easy fight.
When you look at the light heavyweight division, it's so deep. You got fighters like Adonis Stevenson, and you got Bedo Jack, and you got Kovalev, and Govacic, and so many others. Are you excited by the possibilities?
Of course, it excites me. It makes me happy because I wish there was more fighters that are competitive in the division because it makes it interesting. It makes it very challenging. The more fighters that are competitive, the more fights that are competitive, it gives you the opportunity to prove that you're the best. That's what it's about. That's what makes the division exciting. Even back in history when, the times of Sugar Ray Leonard, the type of opponents he was able to fight and prove himself with made him who he is. The guys he was able to fight, like Sugar or Chorn, Roberto Duran, Marvin Hagler. All the big stars and big names that he was able to perform with and prove himself with.
The same like Muhammad Ali generation. It was George Foreman, Joe Frazier, great boxers.
All the big names.
Right. Yeah.
They helped each other to be the best, to make history.
Very true. Is Kovalev the man you'd most like to fight, or are you more interested in one of the others?
Doesn't really matter to me. I'm interested in the biggest fight that the fans would want to see. I'm hoping a lot of fans want to see a big fight, and that's a great challenge. As far as Kovalev, everybody asks me about Sergey and fighting him because we boxed on the same channel.
Yeah.
Everybody understands that's the easier fight to make.
Yeah. Would Dmitry, would you like to see Andre Ward come out of retirement?
Of course, it would be great for our division, and it will be more interesting, our division. And of course, fight against Andre Ward, it's a big thing for everyone in light heavyweight division. And for me, of course, too.
We are talking to Dmitry Bivol on the Ringside Boxing Show. Dmitry, I'm sure it's a very different feeling when you fight in an American arena like Madison Square Garden or Mandalay Bay as opposed to home in Russia. Is that true? Do you have a different feeling when you fight in an American arena?
It's a little bit different because, I probably have a bigger fan base at home, but at the end of the day, in fighting in the amateurs, I have to travel all over the world and fight everywhere. So I learned from that, and that experience has made me learn that I can focus on my fight anywhere. The most important thing to me is for the ring to be there and the opponent across the way.
Mm. Are American boxing fans very different from the Russian boxing fans?
Yeah, I can say that in the United States, there's more fans of boxing. There's a lot more people that like boxing. But in Russia also, there's a lot of people come out and support. It seems like sometimes that maybe there's less guys that actually like boxing.
You're only 27 years old, and like you said, you have a family back home. Do you see yourself fighting for a lot of years?
It's hard to predict. While I can do it, I plan to box. I don't think Bernard Hopkins at 27 thought that he's going to come out and fight at 50.
That's true. That's true. Okay, last question for you. Are your parents and your wife supportive of your career, or do they wish you had chosen to do something safer for a living?
Absolutely. My parents support me. They always supported me, and they actually support me in everything I do. That's what, I love them so much for that because it's great. They're very supportive. As far as my parents, and if I told my parents that I decided to stop boxing, they would also support that. So it's really my decision. And as far as my wife, she really loves boxing because that's how I met her. I met her in an airport when I was going to a training camp in amateur. So she really loves boxing.
Okay.
Wow. Okay.
Great.
Dmitry, it's been a great pleasure talking to you today. We want to thank you again for making some time at your training camp to join us on the Ringside Boxing Show. Best of luck to you on August 4th at the Hard Rock Cafe in Atlantic City against Isaac Chilemba. Thank you, sir.
Thank you, Dmitry.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Good luck.
Bye.
Thank you.
Okay, Dmitry Bivol is the WBA light heavyweight champion of the world. He's going to be fighting August 4th at the Hard Rock in Atlantic City against Isaac Chilemba. You'll see that one on HBO. The guy's a class act. He's a guy we can root for. Hey, do you like this show? Do us a solid and tell other boxing fans about us. Post us on your social media sites and help the Ringside Boxing Show grow. Also, please do not forget to check out the #1 website in the world for daily boxing news. We update ringsideboxingshow.com 365 days a year with the biggest headlines and very hottest stories every single day. This should be your first stop every morning, and it might be the only place you need to go for your boxing fix. ringsideboxingshow.com. Check it out right now. That's going to do it for us today on the Ringside Boxing Show. Thanks, as always, to our expert analysts, Travis Hartman, Rizwan Zahid, and my partner here, John J. Responti, as well as our British correspondent, Paul McLaughlin, and another very big thanks to the WBA light heavyweight champion of the world, Dmitry Bivol from St. Petersburg, Russia. That's going to do it for us. Keep your chin tucked, and we'll talk to you next week on the Ringside Boxing Show.
Well, it's a great day for me to whoop somebody's ass. It's a bad day, so you better get off of my back, 'cause you might get cold cocked if you cross my path. It's a great day for me to whoop somebody's ass.